Mainly the reason why we start a diet program or start with a trainer is because we don't like ourselves. But what would happen if we just changed that energy and we started to eat foods that serve us because we love ourselves, and we start to move our body because we honor our body through love? And that's a very, very powerful energy. And if you have kids, if you have pets, if you notice you have close friends, anybody, notice what happens when you speak to them with the energy of love versus the energy of criticism. It's way more powerful.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Power in the Pause podcast. Welcome to today's show. As a quick reminder, please do not forget to hit subscribe so that you do not miss a single episode that comes out every single week. And it would mean the world to me if you would also leave a 5-star rating so that more people can find this podcast. Okay, without further ado, thank you guys for joining me in today's episode because I am here with Shaban. Hello, Sherry. How are you?
I'm well, Wendy. Thanks so much for having me here today.
Oh my goodness. I'm so excited that you are here today. And you guys, you're going to want to pay really close attention to today's episode because we are going to dive headfirst into how it is that you can embrace the transformative pause in your health and nutrition. So let me introduce and share a little bit more with you all about Sherry. So Sherry is an extraordinary fitness and life coach who's battled back from the brink of paralysis to transform not only her body, but her entire outlook on life. She is an osteopath and an anti-diet health and life coach from Montreal, Quebec. And she is the founder of the Fall in Love with Fitness podcast, the Hit Dex app, and Make Peace with Food. She is also a leader in the anti-diet approach, which is intended to rewire the brain's relationship with food to naturally release body weight and struggles forever. Sherry has over 23 years of experience in the fitness industry, and she is a renowned expert in the most challenging weight loss cases and has helped thousands of people worldwide to transform their health and fitness using her revolutionary method to rewire the brain, release self-sabotaging, limiting beliefs and patterns, and fall in love with fitness so that weight loss becomes easy, predictable, and enjoyable. A to the frickin' men, because as we were just chatting about before we hit record, you guys, I have been on a massive struggle bus with my health and my nutrition and my weight for the last couple of years, especially since my mom passed away. And it's really why I'm hugely passionate about this topic, why I'm really excited to have Sherry here and on the show today. So Sherry, I would love for you to share more about the mental and physical connection, right? I don't think that we necessarily connect the two. And as you very, quickly shared with me before we hit record, the mental and the physical well-being are deeply connected. So how is it that they are? Share more of your wisdom with us, please.
Well, again, thank you so much for having me, Wendy. And as I'm hearing you introduce me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I just turned 44 2 days ago. So I got to rewrite my bio a little bit because we just upped a year. But this is a really brilliant question because unfortunately, our society always tells us that it's as simple as watching the calories in. You got to eat less, you got to move more. And that is the magic formula for weight loss. And that is the greatest lie that's ever been sold. And I'm going to say sold because that's really what's behind it. This is a $1 billion industry where we're going to be sold tons of products, different types of diets. And as we know, a new diet comes in every single week practically. And the truth is everything has to do with our nervous system. And so if we understand the way the nervous system works, understanding that the nervous system doesn't just control the physiological processes. And when I talk about the nervous system, I'm talking about the autonomic nervous system. This is part of the nervous system that controls heart rate, that controls blood pressure, that controls hormones and all the regulation of all the things we never have to think about. Like, for example, our liver detoxifying for us at this moment, our bladder is accumulating urine for us at this moment. But once we understand that it's also very much governed by our thoughts and by our emotions, everything changes. And what's interesting about that is that every single thought that we have in the mind creates chemistry in the body. So think of what happens when we have a sexual thought, because this is something that we will all resonate with. We know that when we have a sexual thought, there's a very particular area of the body that gets turned on. What happens when we watch a scary movie? All of a sudden we start to sweat, we start to get afraid, we start to actually feel like we're in that movie. Or when we watch a sad movie, we react. Well, the same thing happens when we have thoughts about our health that may feel scary. We might have self-judging thoughts that suddenly start to also trigger chemistry in the body that triggers the nervous system. And our nervous system, when we talk about the autonomic nervous system, we are talking about the sympathetic nervous state. Then we also talk about parasympathetic, but you're going to hear me relate to them as protection mode and then as safety mode, because that's really what's going on in the body. The body is either trying to seek out survival, which is when we're in sympathetic nervous state or protection mode, or it's trying to rest and digest. It's trying to heal. And that's what we call parasympathetic or safety mode. And so anytime we have thoughts that bring up feelings of anxiety, stress, fear, doubt after a very traumatic event, for example, such as a loss of a loved one, or such as a lot of stress at work. And this is, by the way, now our day-to-day life where we are congratulated for having a lot of stress. We're congratulating for moving from one thing to the next without any pauses in between. Go, go, go. Keep moving, keep moving. That's where we start to notice that we are in protection mode dominance. And so the first thing that happens on a physiological level when we are in protection mode, so let's say, for example, we have thoughts that are self-deprecating, or we have thoughts that are worrying, or thoughts that bring up fear or doubt or uncertainty, right away, the body's going to respond in a way to seek out survival. So physiologically, the body slows down the metabolism. All of a sudden, it's harder for us to release weight. Why is that? Because the body's trying to conserve energy. And so we may be exercising, we may be working out, we may be changing our nutrition, and the body actually starts to see this as another threat, another layer of threat, because if we're truly in danger and the body's seeking and feeling danger from our environment and from our thoughts, right away, it's going to start to try to conserve energy. And as we reduce calories or we start to change our food, and especially if a lot of the thoughts around that is very worrying, we're fearing gaining weight, we're fearing the way our body looks, we're so upset at the way things are changing, we're uncomfortable in our body. All of this continues to trigger the nervous system. And then we start to notice that we have an affinity for certain foods. And you'll notice that whenever we emotionally eat, whenever we binge eat, whenever we turn on that body's natural mechanism to binge, which, by the way, is attached to protection mode, it's part of the sympathetic nervous system, you'll notice we're tending to crave things that are very high in sugar, very high in calories, foods that can give us an instant amount of energy in a short amount of time. We're not craving carrots and cucumbers. That's a no-brainer. The body's like, what are you doing? Giving me a few calories? No, 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 no. We're trying to seek out survival. Give me a bigger bang for my buck. And so we'll start to notice this. And the pause really is to take a moment to start to examine our thoughts. Because again, if we're aware that every single thought is either going to trigger parasympathetic nervous state, which is safety mode, or sympathetic nervous state, which is protection mode, we can then start to influence our environment, be aware of the triggers, and then start to apply tools and different exercises to really help shift the nervous system.
Yeah, it's so incredibly important. As you're talking, I'm even thinking to myself, like, I feel like we get rewarded by being on a hamster wheel. We get rewarded by checking things off, and we live such a, an unconscious life. I feel like so much. And we don't necessarily like, I'll say it this way, that so many times we're not being thoughtful about the food that we're putting in our body, that we're just trying to like satiate the hunger need and then get back on the hamster wheel of life and just keep going. So how can practicing mindful eating and really incorporating these pauses, these self-care practices, which I think pausing is a self-care practice, but how can we incorporate these self-care practices to really further support our health and well-being in these moments?
Yeah, I love what you just said, Wendy, mindful eating, because satiety and fullness are two different things. Some of us may notice that we eat to a point where we're full, physically full, our stomach is full, yet we're not satisfied. And so when we can become mindful with our eating, meaning we're being very present with that mealtime, almost like it's a ritual. And by the way, I do ritualize my meals, which means I have a specific time for it. I pause everything. I'm not trying to do multitasking while I'm also eating. If we can actually become more present with our food, we can gain more satiety, because satiety doesn't just have to do with how much we're eating. Satiety has to do with the involvement of our senses. We actually eat and we experience our food through our five senses. So taking a moment, for example, to even before we start eating, just sitting in front of our plate and just feeling so incredibly grateful and having so much gratitude for what we're eating. This is the number one step. Think about how we grab and go. We're driving to work and we grab something on the way and we quickly shove it in our mouth, or we're taking the kids to soccer practice and we're eating something on the way. We're never really present with our food. So starting by observing our food, looking at our food, realizing that, hey, there are conflicts right now happening around the world where people don't even get to eat. Here, I get to eat. I choose to eat whenever I want to eat. Whereas there are certain people who have to wait days and days until they finally get their first meal. So let me start first with gratitude and appreciating also the colors and just noticing the textures, sitting a moment with the smell of my food. And then as I start to introduce the food into my mouth, I'm really aware of the textures. I'm aware of the temperatures. I'm really involving all my senses to be a part of this experience, chewing slowly, making sure that I'm not watching TV, or I'm not on a call maybe, or I'm not on the phone while I'm eating. Again, being fully present. And so that's a really great way. And then even just the process of maybe cooking, or when we do purchase our foods, if we do have to eat out, just that gratitude of being able to even purchase the foods. And so I know it sounds so small, but it's so big and it's so impactful. Again, just remembering that food is not just this process where we're trying to get as full as quickly as possible, but it's this experience, and it could be a holistic experience if we create space for it.
Yeah. And I think that so many of us have just become, or maybe it's better to say it this way. Like, I feel like so many times I get discouraged and it's like, oh, like, you get into the self beat up, right? Part of the negative self-talk. And, how can somebody really just be an observer of their unhealthy habits? And what is one way that they can make a really quick change starting today?
Mm. Be that non-judgmental witness. And that's really the key to breaking any binge eating cycle, any emotional eating cycle, any self-sabotaging cycle. And today we're talking about food, but let's go ahead and plug in alcohol. Let's plug in drugs. Let's plug in overspending or over shopping. These are all behaviors that are driven by that nervous system, that motivation to move away from pain and move towards pleasure so instantaneously. And if we really want to break the cycle, as the non-judgmental observer, we don't judge ourselves for our behavior. We simply observe. And by simply observing, that is the most powerful tool that you can use for change. You can't heal what you don't know you're trying to heal. And so first, by understanding, what is it that I'm trying to heal? All right, I just went through an entire pint of ice cream and I ate half the box of Oreo cookies. I have two options. I can either beat myself up, call myself all kinds of ugly names that I never call anyone else. I just sit and call myself these names and then notice that I'm going to be involved in it again. And I only feel worse. What happens when I feel worse? Well, I feel defeated. I feel like giving up. I feel like I'm going to throw in the towel, and it's complete resignation. And here I go again. I'm right back in the cycle. Or I can have compassion for myself. I can have non-judgment. I can have self-love, taking a step back and just observing, okay, let's look at it like it's a movie playing out. What happened? What was that trigger? We get triggers from our environment, again, through our five senses. And our trigger gives rise to a thought. So a trigger is something we see. It's something we smell. It's something we taste. It brings up a memory. All of a sudden we have a thought. A thought drives an emotion. What is the emotion that we're feeling? Is the emotion part of protection mode, or is it part of safety mode? Remember, the emotions of protection modes is depression and uncertainty and worry and fear and doubt and anxiety. And you'll notice that your thoughts are either in the past or in the future. They're never in the present. And if you notice that your emotions are of compassion and gratitude, as we just mentioned, and love and kindness and space and excitement and joy, those are all emotions of safety mode. And so start to notice, because the emotion is what drives the action. The action and repeat becomes the habit, and the habit eventually becomes our character. And so with a non-judgmental stance, can we look at the entire picture as though, again, it's playing out a movie? Find the trigger. What is the emotion? Remember that if by the end of this behavior, we start judging, what we're doing is adding a secondary emotion. The secondary emotion now, again, is either going to support protection mode or safety mode. If I'm going to try to switch my nervous system from protection mode to safety mode, I have to remember that the cycle is going to end the moment I'm also able to readjust that emotion without judgment.
Yeah, I think it's so wise. And what it also brings up is something I talk about a lot too, which is that, so many times we tend to think that we can hold ourselves accountable. But what I've learned is that we are our own worst accountability partner, and having, a community or somebody to support and guide us along any of these journeys, especially ones where we're making shifts in how we think, right? We're trying to reconnect our thoughts, in our mental state to our physical. So talk a little bit about why having support, right? Why having guidance and knowledge and information and a community for support is so important as we are sort of navigating this health and nutrition world that I think so many of us really truly struggle with.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's this concept for some reason that we have to do it on our own. And if we don't do it on our own, we're weak and we're not disciplined. But what we're forgetting is that energy is so contagious, and that we are influenced and bombarded daily from the moment we wake up until the moment we are in bed by messages that bring up those negative thoughts, or the thoughts that trigger protection mode. And so think about what happens as soon as we wake up and we're like, oh, it's Monday. Oh, gosh. And then we go and look at ourselves in the mirror. And then right away, the mind's like, ew, look at you. And you can't even this. And look, you put on weight and your pants don't fit anymore. And there's all these thoughts in our mind. And then all of a sudden we go on social media and there we are, bombarded by all kinds of things. And we should be and should, and more shoulds and shoulds and shoulds throughout the day. And so having that environment where not only do you have maybe a coach or a support group helps you really reframe. It helps interrupt the pattern. And it reminds you that there is a way to shift your energy towards that which you want to create. And especially if you're involved in a space where people are trying to do what you're trying to do. You're going to notice that with a collective energy, with a collective consciousness, you're way more powerful. And when you have those moments of self-doubt, somebody's going to step up and remind you of what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so I always see this too, when couples start training together, when couples start doing things together, or when people start the gym and they have an accountability partner or a friend to go with them, you're more likely to stay committed. And so there is power in masses. And if you find that space, even if it's just a friend, or if it's, let's say, a group that you feel like you resonate with, that becomes the most powerful leverage for change.
Yeah, it's so important. And I would love for you to leave our audience today with, like, what is one way that they can start a more mindful next chapter as it relates to their health and nutrition?
Oh, so good. It's so simple. And I'm going to suggest to just start with gratitude. When you wake up in the morning, instead of thinking about what you don't have, what you wish you had, which is really our human behavior. We're always thinking about, I wish I had this. I wish it would look like that. I wish it was more like this person's. And we're constantly comparing ourselves. Instead, just think about how every single part of your body, even the fact that you get to wake up and breathe freely, is a gift. And so one thing that I would suggest, and this is one of my practices, the moment I realize I'm conscious in the morning, and I realize I've stepped into my consciousness, before I even get out of bed, I will say 5 things I'm grateful for. Generally, I'm really grateful for the comfortable bed that I'm in. I'm so grateful that I get to breathe today. I'm so grateful that my eyes are working today. I'm grateful that I get to hear. I hear my dogs downstairs. I hear my kids. I'm so grateful for every little teeny tiny things I have. And that starts my day. And then another really powerful practice, and this is one that I know is going to be a bit challenging, is doing that same thing, looking at yourself in the mirror completely naked. Whereas normally we spend a lot of our time pulling out the things we don't like about our body, criticizing our body for all the little tiny things, but standing in front of the mirror and just being so grateful that we have arms that work, that legs that carry us, to allow us to do all the things that we love and enjoy to do, that there's parts of our bodies, that we have a back that supports us and brings us to place A to place B. And so it is really that small, giving gratitude to yourself, because normally we punish ourselves through nutrition. We punish ourselves through exercise. Mainly the reason why we start a diet program or start with a trainer is because we don't like ourselves. But what would happen if we just changed that energy and we started to eat foods that serve us because we love ourselves, and we start to move our body because we honor our body through love? And that's a very, very powerful energy. And if you have kids, if you have pets, if you notice you have close friends, anybody, notice what happens when you speak to them with the energy of love versus the energy of criticism. It's way more powerful.
Well, and it's high vibration, right? The frequency is so much higher. And, and I love the gratitude practice. And I think we overcomplicate what that has to look like or what that gets to mean. And it can simply be, just being grateful that you breathe, right? We breathe the air that we have this gift of this life, and that you have a roof over your head. I mean, it doesn't have to be complicated. Sherry, I absolutely adore you. I think you are such a ray of sunshine, and I'm so grateful that our paths crossed. And I want to make sure that everybody knows where they can find you. So what and where can people find you? And I also know that you have a very generous gift for my listeners today.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to also tell you that it's been such an honor, Wendy, and you are a gorgeous light. And please keep doing what you're doing. Your message is so powerful. So if anybody wanted to connect with me, Instagram is the fastest way, at Sherry Shaban Fitness, all kinds of links there. And then to offer you maybe a way to get started on your journey, if you've resonated with this conversation, if you're struggling with emotional eating, binge eating, any other unwanted eating behavior or self-sabotaging behavior, you can head on over to makepeacewithfood.com. And there is a free workbook for you there to get started on your journey and to really start to self-reflect and process some of these things.
Amazing. So generous. Thank you so much, Sherry, for being here. And everybody, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. You know that with every single podcast episode, my goal is to help each and every one of you guys to see the power in the pause. And today's episode was even more important because I think that one of the areas of our life that we don't realize impacts even how we show up in business is the transformative pause that we can start taking and being more conscious in our health as well as our nutrition, and connecting the dots between the physical and the mental. So thank you guys for tuning in. Sending you all so much love and light always. Mwah. If you guys like today's episode, give me a 5-star rating, leave a review, would be even more amazing. And don't forget to hit subscribe. Follow me across social media, Wendy Page Sterling, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, everybody.